Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'm going to be making a very small Penjing style bonsai. So basically what that is Penjing is like a landscape in a tray. It's a bit like a bonsai, but you have several trees instead of one. And what I'll be doing is I'll be using liverwort for this. So liverwort, as you can see here, is an unusual weed in the fact that when it has these kind of reproductive bodies that grow up, it's a bit complicated. They're not actually flowers, but these are the female parts anyway. With liverwort, it's either male or female plant, and you can see here it's got these kind of strange little miniature palm trees that kind of grow up. So what I'm going to be using is these miniature palm tree effect things, and I'm going to be using them to look like a palm tree scene. So what I've done is I've got this large painting tray, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to landscape it, and I'm going to make a Oasis style landscape. So it'll be like a desert oasis where there's a pool in the middle with water, lots of palm trees around it, and a few little shrubs and other trees as well. If you're interested in the liverwort and its unusual kind of fruiting bodies that it has here, I've made an introduction video about this plant, so you can have a look at that as well. And I've also made a video as well where I made a little miniature desert island. So this is what I'll be using. This is concrete sand, so it's maybe not the best for this. It's got lots of little stones in it, but I might arrange some of these stones to try and make it a little bit more interesting. It's also got some harder, bigger lumps. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to smooth this all out, make sure all the hard lumps are gone, and make sure there's no dirt or anything in it. And then I'm going to start landscaping it. So that's the biggest lumps now broken down. What I'm using here is a paint tray, just for a roller painter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have in this deep section here, that's where the oasis is going to be. And then going to have this as a backdrop, as like undulating sand dunes. And so it's going to be viewed from kind of this angle here. So I'll put it there on the camera, a bit more like that angle. So I want to create a little bit of a hollow down here for the oasis. Then, as I say, I want it to kind of gradually come up, and then in the background I'm going to have some large sand dunes. Now you will see there is a bit of plastic there. It is naturally deeper at this section, so what I'm going to have to do is make sure that all that plastic is covered, and then I just want to create something that looks a bit like a natural sand dune effect. So I think that's the landscaping mostly done. I can't make the sand dunes too high because the sand is quite dry. It doesn't really go over 45-degree angle. But what I'm going to do now is create more of this hollow. It's probably kind of hard to see in the camera, the actual undulation. It's all the same kind of colour, but once I add some liverwort, it should be a little bit more obvious. So I'm just going to go ahead now and start adding it. So with the liverwort, the actual main growing body of the plant is these kind of green mats down here. They grow and spread throughout most of the year, and then what happens when it comes to time for it to reproduce, it sends out these stalks. On the female plants you get these kind of miniature palm trees. On the male plants there's another structure which looks quite different. It doesn't look like miniature palm trees. So all the plants that I'll be using for this will be the female plants, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some scissors and cut these up into small sections so I can individually place them, and then I'm going to actually cover the green bit in sand. So this is kind of like a temporary Penjing thing. It will look like a miniature landscape probably for a few weeks, and then once these flowering structures die off, it's not going to really look like a miniature palm trees anymore. It'll look like either dead palm trees, or what happened is the green section here from the liverwort, which is the main part of the plant, will come up out of the sand, and it will just kind of form a green mat. So it'll look good for a little while, but what I can do is I can always continue growing this green mat, and then next year when it sends up these fruiting bodies again, I can then cut this up and then create another Penjing kind of a landscape as well. So I just need to figure out where the water line will be on my oasis, and I'm just going to bury these, as I say, just so the green's covered. I will have a little bit of green showing, I think, because that will look a bit like a green understory of grass or something. I'm just going to make sure that the palm tree is at the right angle as well. So I'll just continue now, and I'll plant this all up. So that's most of the palm trees set out like I'd like them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start adding water, and then I'll maybe add a few other bits of plant and vegetation around here as well, so it looks like the palm trees have actually got something growing underneath them. I also need to just tweak a few of them, make sure they're all facing the right direction so they're not leaning over too much, and make sure the ones are not too buried. I do quite like the effect that the having some of this leafy appearance of the actual main body of the liverwort is having, and we're getting this nice kind of green effect around the base. So I definitely want to maybe expose a little bit more of that, and we'll just see how it goes. Just tweak it here and there, maybe add a few more palm tree effect bits of liverwort, and as I say, maybe some moss and some other vegetation just to kind of add to the appearance of it. So I'm now going to add some water. Now things probably will shift around a bit when I do this, so I'll have to readjust things. Also, working with wet sand is a lot more difficult than working with dry sand, so this is why I'm not doing this until later on in the process of making it. And this sand will probably soak up quite a lot of water, so it'll be surprising how much water this will actually take. So because it looks like the sand is actually going to soak up all the water I'm giving it and eventually soak up all the sand behind it, what I'm actually going to do is just use an old lid from a milk top. I'm just going to put that in the bottom instead, and that's just going to hold the water. Unfortunately, it does look like, as I say, this sand is very absorbent. I wasn't expecting it to be this absorbent, and it's just going to keep soaking up the water. So what I'm going to do, place that in there like that, and then just carefully hide it with some sand so it kind of blends in, and it's not obvious that we've got some plastic in there holding the water. So unfortunately the sand is actually far more absorbent than I was expecting, and even a little bit of sand going in and over the plastic is enough for it to soak it up. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm just going to have to surround the edge of the water with some moss or maybe some other greenery, because the sand is just far too absorbent and it's just taking up anything that I put in there. So I need to just adjust this a little bit. So I've surrounded the outside with some moss. I've also put in some pearlwort, which was in my garden. It's a very small weed that you often find growing on lawns, so that really adds to the miniature effect. I've also got a very small seedling here. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It's very tiny. I just found it growing in my garden, so I'm just going to pop that in there, and it will just look like a broadleaf tree as opposed to a palm tree. So that's going in that section there. And I'm just going to add a few more bits. I've got some baby tears as well. That's just gonna trail around the edge somewhere. Now this hasn't got many roots on it, but it should take root over time. You can normally take cuttings of this quite easily, so look a bit like a spreading vine or something in the landscape. So these plants, I'm using most of these plants will survive and grow over time. The baby's tears will probably lose a few leaves and then they'll resprout them as it sets roots. As long as it's sitting on a damp surface, it normally puts down its roots quite easily. And the moss as well will grow well, and then as I say, with the palm trees, they'll slowly die over time, but the green mat underneath will spread, and then next year they'll send up a load of new ones as well. So it will be perennial, but some of the display will be just kind of temporary. So I've also gone and got some very small succulents. I've got some sedum acre, which again will set root. It doesn't have any roots because I've just cut it off from the main plant, but these will set root over time. And what I want to do is just kind of dot them around the background, a bit like their small cacti or succulents. They probably would be similar to a agave or something. So though I was going more for a North African Sahara desert kind of scene with the date palms and the large sand dunes and the water oasis in the middle, these are a little bit more like a South American plant, but I think it's still kind of in fitting with the kind of desert theme. I could pretend there's more aloe veras because aloe vera is native to North Africa. So I'm quite liking how the pearlwort looks, so I'm going to get a few more bits of pearlwort and a few more bits of the baby's tears as well, just to add to this display. So after a bit more searching around my garden, I found a few more interesting self-seeded weeds. So to say the pearlwort, I've got a bit more of it. This One has, as you can see, it's got flowers and some seed pods starting to form, so I thought that looked interesting. We've also got some hairy bittercress seedlings, so you can see one here. I think this will look interesting because it might look a bit like a water lily if I put it in the pond. Now this, if I keep it waterlogged, will rot off, and if I leave it for too long it will become quite a large plant. So this will just be a temporary plant really, but I thought that looked quite nice. But there's a few of them, so I might dot them around elsewhere as well. I've got some slightly smaller ones, and I even found a really tiny silver birch seedling as well. So I'm going to put this little silver birch in as well because its leaves are so small. It does kind of keep in with the theme of the size that we're going for. So I'll just go ahead now and plant these all up. So I think that's it fully designed now and ready. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my other camera lens and I'm going to change the angle so you can see it closer up and have more of that kind of landscape effect, because at the moment I'm just facing down so you can see me building it. So I've tried to get a good angle to see this from, but as you can see I can't get low enough because this plastic is in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some metal cutters, or basically some industrial scissors, and I'm going to cut this plastic out so that we can actually see this a lot better. So that's the Oasis now finished. I'm quite happy with the final outcome. It does look quite a lot like a little miniature oasis with the sand dunes behind. What I'll do is I'll take some close-up photos so you can see a bit more close-up. It does kind of ruin the illusion when you look too close though. It does look best from a slight distance, but you can see these lovely little palm trees. And just for a sense of scale, I'm just going to put a little Lego man in there, just a normal sized Lego man. You can see how small all the plants are in this miniature oasis and how tiny it actually is. So that's all for this video. What I might do is I might keep growing this for a year or two, see what happens. What I suspect will probably happen is some of the plants will take over. I need to do some pruning, and if I don't keep the edges dry enough, the liverwort in the middle will spread throughout the whole area and we'll end up with lots of liverwort over the whole thing. So we'll definitely need a bit of upkeep and maintenance, but as I say, I'm quite happy with how it looks. It's quite an interesting little Penjing bonsai, definitely the smallest landscape that I've ever made.